Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of TMC, the Mainframe community. I'm your host, Niall Ashley. Without further ado, I'm joined by Laura Richardson from Ensono. Laura, do you want to tell our audience a bit about yourself?
Hi. My name's Laura Richardson. I currently work as a entry-level mainframe systems programmer at Ensono. And I've been in the mainframe sphere for about 2 years now, so I would fall under the new to Z category.
Same, don't
And
worry.
definitely happy to be here.
Yeah. So you've been in this place for about 2 years.
Mhm.
Been a pretty hot and heavy 2 years, right? It's quite
Oh,
a lot,
yes.
yeah?
Very much so, yes.
Good.
Mhm.
So, we were talking earlier as part of a kind of feedback discussion, and it's an overwhelming sometimes industry to get into. So we might touch on those topics in today's in today's questions.
Yeah, of
But
course.
I guess starting off with quite a sort of personal one. What does the word community, the meaning of community mean to you?
For me, community is like sort of like a gathering space where people come together, share their ideas, support each other. When I think about community, I think about a place to grow and a place to grow others as well.
Yes, it's like it doesn't have to be one, sunflower grows taller than the rest. We can
Right.
all grow in our own space, but with a sort of togetherness, right?
Exactly.
So in that regard, I guess, would you say you've experienced much competitiveness in the last 2 years, or has it been very collaborative?
I would say it has been very collaborative. A lot of one of the things that I do see a lot is sometimes it's harder to get people that have been in the industry a little bit longer than you. We're talking about 20, 30 years to take the time away and sort of teach you what it is that you need to know. But for the most part, the mainframe community has been very inclusive. And if you can't get a response from one person, there's always someone else that you can always reach out to. And when all else fails, you have IBM documentation, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a really good point. And I know our guest earlier, Jim Horn, said something similar. He said it's not always about that you know the answer, is that you know who to talk to about the answer. You know, those
Right.
connections, that having the intuitive kind of nature to say, well, I don't know, but I know either XYZ people or the IBM support, the docs, etc. I think that's a really good point. Okay, so I guess we're knowing what community means to you and knowing a bit about the communities, the New to Z community, for example, that you're a part of. Outside of the mainframe space, are there any community groups that you are a part of? Any hobbies, clubs, extracurricular stuff, any, I don't know, voluntary fruits?
Yeah, most certainly. Right now, I do a little bit of volunteer work. Life has been a little bit busy, so I've stepped away from community a
Don't
lot.
worry.
However, when I do have the chance, I do volunteer some, whether it's at a nursing home or at a church event or at PTA or something that's going on at the school. I love volunteering and just giving back whenever I have a chance to.
I think that's lovely. And I think it's really important as well, with, say the church or the PTA or with kind of caring nursing. I think these are all things that are very pastoral, right?
Yeah.
And in a technical role, it's hard to be pastoral. Sometimes I look at, what my partner does, and she does sort of psychology.
Right.
She tries to help people with their mental health and their perspectives on their own life. And I sort of think, I envy that she gets to help people. She makes a tangible difference to people.
Right.
But there isn't a reason that we can't do that, just because we don't do that necessarily in our technical role, right?
Right.
So how long have you done that for?
Honestly, on and off since I've been about 16 years old.
Wow,
Mhm.
that's lovely though. Because I
Yes,
mean,
sir.
it's these topics are so important. And I think, a lot of people get to that age where they're leaving school and they're like, it's not cool to do any of the voluntary stuff. And
Yeah.
also maybe they're just busy. I've got
Yeah.
university, I've got a part-time job, I've got any number of things, I've got to support my family and work. And so I think it's really good that you've, not only found the time but the energy to give back and give forwards, to
Right.
these different people.
Right. It's definitely very rewarding because honestly, sometimes you want to pour into somebody else, and oftentimes, especially being in this sphere, people are pouring to me every day, whether it's trying to help me out to learn something new, or trying to guide me through the community, or through mentorship, or just reaching out and trying to find my footing. And so while I can't necessarily do that for someone in the mainframe community right now, but that does not mean I can do it for somebody outside of that. And so whenever I find, little opportunities to give back, I definitely enjoy doing so.
I think that's honestly just it's touching that I think there's to know there's people who still do that, especially because like you say, there's no you say there's no incentive, there's no financial incentive to volunteer, but it's about doing what's right and doing what's important to you, what kind of coalesces with your values.
Right.
In that regard, has there ever been something that you've done in your kind of voluntary capacity that has maybe transferred to your mainframe career? Maybe something from the pastoral space that's transferred into the technical space. Any maybe ethoses, any mindsets, any maybe something that's affected your frame of thinking either way?
Yeah, most definitely. I think I can kind of relate to with your wife being in psychology. A lot of times, even with volunteering, sometimes we don't necessarily give people the benefit of the doubt. And so for me, with my personality, I'm very matcha energy, and so what I've learned, when working with other people, you don't know what that person's going through that day.
Absolutely.
Right? And so it's always good to give grace. And so I've had to learn to give grace within volunteering opportunities, especially if you're working in homeless shelters, or if you're working with certain aspects of the community where they're just not as privileged as you. And so I've been able to just bring that into the mainframe sphere. So if I were to reach out to you and I'm either getting the cold shoulder, or I'm not getting the response that I feel that I should, I'm always thinking maybe you're busy, or maybe, there's something going on that day and you just are not available or readily available to help me. So the same way that I've learned to extend grace outside of the mainframe community is the same way I bring the same grace and extend that to other people in this community as well.
People say that patience is a virtue,
Right.
but I think it's also important to note that it goes both ways. As you said, I mean, there's lots of times where I've got a chaotic life. I wish it wasn't, but and I can take a while to respond to messages,
Right.
and I can overcommit, burn out, and then I have to take time off, and it's messy. But life can be messy for a lot of people,
Right.
And so if people can be patient for me, and I want to be patient for them, it can be a mutual thing. I have a lot of people who say, "Oh, I'm sorry, it took me ages to respond," and then I have to tell them, "Don't worry, because I'm probably worse."
Exactly.
So,
Right.
but we can have that, like you say, have that grace, that respect, that kind of healthy relationship where we just know, I'm not going to pressure this person. I'm not going to rush them, because as much as I might have stuff going on, so might they.
Right.
And I think that mutual understanding is such a healthy thing in any space, no matter what industry, voluntary, pastoral, technical, mainframe, anything.
Yeah.
So that's brilliant.
Yeah.
So I guess we talked about this idea of something that, a frame of mind that's maybe helped you across both of these sort of roles, these responsibilities. But are there any maybe similarities or differences between, I mean, similarities are always an interesting one, between a more pastoral role and a more technical role. Has there been anything that, you've actually found surprising? Like, I didn't think that this would be similar, but it has been.
To think about it, the level of I don't want to say professionality, but more or less, a lot of times you may be volunteering, right? Say for instance, the last thing I volunteered at a nursing home, I had no idea on how to do that, right? And so the same way when you're volunteering, you have to learn. If you're doing something you've never done before, you've got to go out there. You've got to learn. You've got to network.
Yeah.
You've got to talk to people. You've got to be part of the community, understand what they're needing, and not just go there for the day and just, okay, well, I'm just going to check people in for the day. It's the same way within the mainframe community. Anything that you're doing, you've got to learn. You've got to put yourself and be part of a community and reach out and find certain individuals, find the mentorship. So I can say that it's the same way whether you're volunteering or whether you're in the mainframe.
I think that's a really good point, actually. I look at my role, and when I engage in sort of RACF administration and security administration, I have a lot of people who have requests. They want access, they need access. And I sometimes forget, and I do try to correct myself, but I forget to think, why do they need it? What do they need? And sort of, how can I best give it to them?
Right.
Because in the same way that you might care for someone in a pastoral role,
Right.
in a role as a security administrator, in a way, you do have to care about what do they need, how do they need it, like when do they need it,
Right.
But you have to think of it from a perspective of being, like you say, it's not necessarily professional, but it's that kind of, that decorum, that empathy to
Right.
them.
Exactly.
Yeah?
That's the exact word. Because me coming in, I might know, hey, for instance, if I need to set up a new ID, right? And I don't know necessarily what certain securities my ID needs, or, what what certain parts of the application I need to access, right? So if I, if I put in a ticket as a new mainframer, as I'm coming into the space, and I request access, so then instead of you just sending the ticket back, well, who should your ID be modeled after? What kind of access do you need? So, right. So I think it goes back to just extending grace and understanding where people are in their career.
Absolutely.
And their knowledge level as well.
Yeah.
Because just because you might be in 4 or 5 years, the next person might be coming in 1, 2 years, and you may be working with somebody 30, 40 years, and they're not really well versed with technology, right? And so now you have to take time out of your day to figure out what they need because they can't communicate that with you.
I think that's such a good point as well, the communication side.
Right.
Because someone might know they need something, but not be able to use the phrases that maybe, I know from a RACF kind of security side. And maybe I might need access from I might need something from a storage perspective and not know how to phrase it in the right way for you.
Right.
So you have to find that kind of commonality, that build these bridges rather than barriers. We need to, sort of tether ourselves together rather than separating ourselves apart. I think that's a really valid way of thinking. And I guess that kind of leads to what we typically ask as our last question, which is, do you have a call to arms, maybe a kind of a request to the audience? You should do this more, we should do this more, maybe it is about, building these bridges, asking questions, having empathy, or maybe it's something completely different.
Yeah, most certainly. I actually was just speaking to John Carr about this. One of my questions to him is, because we were talking about specializations in the mainframe community, and I asked him, said, well, how do you plan on passing along that knowledge to someone that's coming into this sphere? Because right now it's very hard to, get into certain jobs, right?
Yes.
And so for me, what I would say the call to action is, find a way to pass on your knowledge to someone and find a way to help them to be able to get on with these companies and to be able to do this work. Because let's face it, we don't live forever, right? So
Mortality.
Right. So we just need to, help the new generation that's coming over, not just by creating like certain groups and community, but really, really downloading that information and making sure that they have a leg up, within their current roles.
And it's not even just for the newbies.
Right.
Because you might say that there's people who have 40 years experience and someone who's 20 years experience, you're still new relative, right?
Right.
You don't have to be within your first 5 or 7, 10 years, some arbitrary number of years.
Very valid.
At the end of the day, everyone who's newer to you could, in theory, do with your mentorship, your guidance.
Right.
It shouldn't necessarily be this idea of, well, you're not new anymore because you've been in this space for 10 years.
Right.
But actually, it's all relative.
Right.
So I think that's a really valid point. And I think maybe it's an industry we need to think about that more as well. It's not just about the education, but it's also the frame of thinking. Don't maybe overestimate someone's abilities.
Right.
Or underestimate their want or need to learn.
Good point.
Just because they've been in this space for so long. But again, I'm now thinking more because you've helped me think more. And this is what I love about this podcast is it's all very kind of domino effect.
Right.
We ask these questions and we get into these discussions. And I just think, wow, this industry could have be so much stronger. Like, it's amazing, but it could be so much stronger if we really take on board all of these discussions.
Yeah, good point. I definitely agree with you.
Well, I can honestly say this has been a brilliant interview, and I've just thought about a load of things straight off the bat. So I know our audience are going to think the same way. But I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today, Laura. And I really appreciate your time coming to this conference as well. I mean, if you weren't here and I wasn't here, we wouldn't have met. And I think this is a lovely extension of kind of knowledge between the two of us already. And I mean, I'd say it's been a pleasure. So thank you.
Well, thank
honestly,
you.
what a pleasure.